When do you find you learn the best? What state of mind are you in? What mood? And what about your horse? When did they learn best? In this video, we're going to discuss how emotion affects behavior for both us and for our horses. This is called the inverted U theory, and basically what it tells us is that as our level of energy or engagement or focus increases, our performance is going to increase to a certain point. So up here would basically be our optimal range of performance, and then as our energy or our focus continues to increase, or you could say our focus narrows, then our performance is going to start to drop down. Now this is a very general concept. For individuals, it's going to vary a lot. So if you think about sports players, for example, or anyone that does something that's really competitive. Some people prepare themselves for that by getting really amped up. They might listen to fast-paced music and they might jump around and kind of get themselves really excited. But another person, maybe on the same team, is going to prepare themselves completely differently. So they might want to listen to classical music. They might want to go sit off in the corner by themselves and just close their eyes and really focus on what they're going to do in their performance. So, but the person who is trying to get themselves really amped up in order to perform at their peak, their individual curve might look a little bit more like this. So they're coming up, they sustain it, and then it comes down here. But the person who prepared themselves by maybe going and listening to that slower music and spending a little bit of time just quiet, they might perform better with a curve that looks more like that. So that their optimum performance is going to be at a lower energy level than this person over here that had to get really amped up first. So what I want you to do for the first part of this video is to spend a little bit of time thinking about yourself and how you feel you can perform the best. And when we're talking about perform, to really apply this to the riding, just think about, when do you do your best riding, or when do you do your best work with your horse? Is it when you're feeling really excited and you can't wait to get out to the barn and you're happy and you're just feeling really energetic? Or is it when you're just feeling very calm and very centered and grounded? When do you really perform at your best? When do you feel your best? And that's probably what's going to be more of an optimum range for you. Now let's take a look at how specific emotions can start to influence both our behavior and the behavior of our horses. So as we take another look at this graph, let's kind of put some emotions on here to help better understand where those emotions might kind of fit in. So down here, this is where we might be feeling sad, we might be bored, or maybe we feel disinterested. Over here, when we're at our peak, we're probably feeling focused, probably feeling energized. Many people may describe this as feeling centered. So these are all kind of emotions. Now as we move over here, this is probably where you're more likely to experience fear. You might feel anxious. You might be overly excited. And these emotions are going to kind of play into triggering some of the things that we had talked about happen in here. So this range is kind of where we can start to what's called choke, which is that paralysis by analysis or overthinking what we're doing. Down here is basically where we have that mode of full panic, where we're just reverting to instinctual kind of fight or flight behaviors, and we're no longer able to really think through the situation that we're in. So let's take two examples and start to think about how each of these emotions might change the way that we behave or the way that our horse behaves, even in kind of the same context or with the same behavior. So let me start with an example of my horse Promise. So with Promise, I'm teaching her something called leg lifts, and it's just a simple exercise. What I'm doing is I'm teaching her that when I tap her leg with the whip, I want her to lift and hold her leg, and I'm gradually shaping that I can get a higher lift of the leg and get her to hold it a little bit longer in the air. Now I can tell with Promise, if we practice this on a day where she is focused on the training, where she's kind of in this zone, that she's focused and she's paying attention and she's responsive, but she's not overly anxious or excited about anything, then she'll have some pretty good leg lifts. So I can tell she's thinking and she's really trying to understand what it is that I'm teaching her to do. But on other days, which is more likely for Promise, she gets over in this range where she gets anxious about something that's going on at the farm. She gets just really tight sometimes, like she just doesn't want to be touched or messed with. Or sometimes she gets fearful. So when she's in this kind of a mode, if we start to work on the leg lifts, we're doing the same thing. It might be the same procedure that we were doing the day before, but if she's in this range of emotion, I might get a kick out. So I might get a big kick out, or I might get a strike with her front foot. So she offers a totally different behavior because of her emotion. Now, to kind of come back to this end of the spectrum, if I take her out and maybe I had to, she was laying in her stall, I had to get her up to take her out to the arena, and I didn't do anything to really wake her up or engage her before I start working on the leg lifts, then I might get hardly any response, and I might feel like I'm using a lot of pressure to get her to offer me any kind of a behavior or any kind of a lift of her leg. So this can happen with a lot of different examples, and I'm sure you can think of some for yourself or for your own specific horse or the horse that you ride, where they may be in kind of the same context, you may be doing the same thing with them, but they behave differently or they act differently depending on their emotion. Now for riders, we obviously do the same thing. So as people, our emotions affect us in a huge way. So let's take a rider example. Let's look at someone or consider someone that is maybe riding, and let's say that their horse kicks up at a fly. So it was a kick up, but maybe the horse really didn't mean anything by the behavior. They were just reacting to something. Now, if we as the rider were just in a kind of a calm state, we might do nothing. We might just ignore the kick and keep on going. If we were uptight for some reason, if maybe we were feeling really angry at someone, or we were getting frustrated with our horse, we might be more likely to smack him with the crop when we feel that kick. On the other hand, if we're feeling maybe very timid, or maybe we weren't quite paying attention and we didn't quite understand what was going on because we weren't paying attention, we might react to that kick up by yanking on the reins. So both of those two things, either smacking the horse with the crop or yanking on the reins, would be things that we don't want to do, but they came because of our emotion. So how do we change our emotion? That's the big question, and I want to focus on how we can change our emotion first, and then we'll talk about how we can influence our horses. So there's two main strategies that I want to focus on here, and they can help you whether you need to take yourself up to a better emotional state or whether you need to bring yourself back. And these two things are movement and breathing. So let's start with if you need to bring yourself up, if you need to get yourself more energized or more excited or just kind of increase your focus. So you're going to use movement and breathing, but we're going to use them in different ways. So if you need to bring yourself up, you want to think about more fast-paced movement. You might want to think about doing some jumping jacks or maybe going for a jog. And when you breathe, you want to focus on the inhale. So you want to really think about taking big breaths in to get yourself a little bit more engaged and awake. Now we can use these same two strategies, but just use them a little bit differently if you're starting to get in this range. And I think probably what is most common for us as riders is that we just get anxious or we start feeling fearful. So what you can do in these situations is to do more slow movement. So this would be a time where you might want to do some stretching, or when you focus on your breathing, you want to focus on the exhale. And by using these two simple but specific strategies, I think you'll find that you can start to really make a positive difference and have a little bit more awareness of your state of mind and of your emotion. And let's be honest, emotion affects us in so many ways. And if we can start being conscious of this and starting to stay in a better state just throughout our lives, not just in times that we're thinking about going to the barn and riding, it can really affect our lives in a positive way. So think about interacting with your family or things that you could get done at work. If you started using these tools consistently to keep yourself in this better state of mind. Let's talk now about how you can start to influence your horse's behavior. So we're going to start off by discussing one of the same concepts that we just discussed using for ourselves, and that is movement. So movement is huge for influencing emotion, and we can really use this to our advantage with our horses. So it's a very similar idea that if your horse is feeling too excited or too anxious, which I think for most of us is probably the more common problem, you want to tend to think about doing slower, more repetitive movements. So you might do circles, you might do a simple figure eight, something that kind of allows the horse to just loosen up and work through their body a little bit and start to calm down. Now, on the other side, if your horse needs to get a little bit more energized and engaged, then you want to start using some like faster, different movements. So you might do a lot of transitions, you might do a lot of turns, you might ask for a lot of different things to get that horse moving in quicker ways and start to get their mind a little bit better focused that way. For some horses, doing things like petting or scratching can also have a calming effect, but for some horses it really doesn't seem to make a big difference. So again, this is very individual, but start to be aware of what little strategies work for your horse or whatever horse that you're working with at that time, and which ones don't. And if you ride at a riding school where maybe you're riding different horses all the time, I think you'll start to get a feel if you observe them, and when you first get on, if you start to think about, how is this horse feeling right now? Do I need to get him a little bit more energized? Do I need to calm him down a little bit? Start trying these strategies of, again, if he needs energized, do some transitions, get him moving. If he needs to be calm, do some slower things, do some circles, kind of allow him to kind of find some calmness in that pattern. So again, awareness of this idea is going to make a huge difference for you, for your horse, and for your riding. Go ahead and put in the comments below any questions that you have, and I'd love to hear, number one, where your optimum state is. Do you need to be more amped up, or do you need to feel like you're more calm and centered to really perform at your best? And then how about the horse or the horse that you ride? How do they do best? So I'll see you in the comments.